Chapter 6. The Loss of Two Warriors. The ride to the shore took King Zalafard almost half an hour, and he knew if he could fly, it would have been less. However, he told General Whirlwind and Lieutenant Rockwall to scout ahead. Zalafard hoped this day wouldn't come and longed to be back in bed with a nice cup of tea. However, that was not the case, and now he abdicated the crown to Razial Drakken. He wished there could have been a ceremony but knew it would have to wait. Right now, Zalafard could see the great ocean ahead of him as he galloped down to the tree line and waited. General Whirlwind and Lieutenant Rockwall landed right beside him. "Report!" Zalafard said as General Whirlwind and Lieutenant Rockwall put their hands over their hearts. "Sire, Braxis is at the mouth of the cave, and we saw 2 dead soldiers down there. One had a dagger in his chest, and the other's head was decapitated," General Whirlwind said as Lieutenant Rockwall nodded. "We remained hidden as you asked?" Lieutenant Rockwall said as Zalafard looked towards the cave. "Good. Now, any thoughts as to show this Minotaur our welcome?" Zalafard said with a smirk. "Oh, yes," Rockwall said as his eyes glowed green, and he reached out his hand towards the cave, causing the whole area to shake. The side of the mountain cracked as boulders came crashing down in front of the cave and blocked the entrance. Braxis dove out of the way, nearly hit by several large rocks. "Looks like someone with more power has come to play," Braxis said evilly. Lieutenant Rockwall dived into the ground and tunneled towards Braxis as General Whirlwind, along with Zalafard, followed. Rockwall came bursting out of the ground, wielding 2 black diamond short swords, and launched his attacks at Braxis, moving at top speed. Braxis, who had drawn his great sword, parried the attacks as fast as Zalafard charged in with a double-ended eye sword. Braxis ducked under this and kicked Rockwall away as he engaged Zalafard. Rockwall landed on his back and slid 10 feet away as General Whirlwind joined the fight with his wind sword. Rockwall flipped up and plunged back into the fray as Braxis smiled, dark energy swirling around him. Braxis let out a roar, sending out a shockwave of energy that blasted all 3 back in separate directions. General Whirlwind collided with the rubble that now blocked the cave as pain exploded throughout his back and wings, crying out. He looked up to see Braxis jumping down upon him as he scrambled to escape. The rocks behind him exploded from the impact of Braxis' great sword. Zalafard landed up near the tree line while Rockwall landed in the water. Both rose in time to see Braxis attack on Whirlwind. "Viento!" They both yelled as Whirlwind's helmet flew out of the rubble and landed several feet away. The dust cloud from the collision was so dense that neither of them could see anything. Then Braxis was blasted back as the dust swelled around Whirlwind as he limped towards him. Braxis landed in a crouch and looked up to see him coming. Rockwall and Zalafard ran to rejoin the fight but found the wind was kicking up too much sand for them to see correctly. Viento raised his sword high above his head as Braxis smiled. "So, it's a test of might, is it?" Braxis said as he stood, and his sword began to glow the same sickly green again. His eyes glowed red as the energy of the same color swirled around him. "Viento! Be careful!" Zalafard shouted as he tried desperately to see. He wanted to element work the water but didn't want to risk hitting Viento or Rockwall. Viento radiated power as the winds whipped at his clothes. He suddenly lowered his sword to mid-level and shouted, "Dragon's Tempest!" The winds went wild as they gathered behind Viento to form a giant spectral dragon. It opened its maw as the winds roared out along with streaks of sky-blue light, and blasted forth. Braxis let out a roar of his own, unleashing a blast of sickly green light. The 2 energies collided in the middle with a cataclysmic explosion that sent everyone flying. Zalafard landed in a pine that wobbled significantly, and threatened to blow over as he heard a snap. He cried out in pain due to his left wing breaking on impact, and clung to the base of a branch. Rockwall was pushed deeper into the water but noticed the water had retreated from the blast. He shook his head as he looked up. It seemed eerily quiet as more dust hung in the air like fog. He stumbled forward a couple of steps before coming to a stop. As the dust settled, they saw Viento Whirlwind's body lay broken on a large boulder with blood dripping out of his maw and nostrils. His whole body was battered, with chunks of his armor missing and several cuts. His eyes looked blank as he stared off into nothingness as one of his horns was broken in half. His wind sword lay next to his hand. "Viento!" They cried as they both started rushing over but stopped as the dust settled enough to reveal Braxis was still standing. Black blood trickled out of his left nostril, and he had several cuts along his arms, legs, and body. However, he seemed to be panting hard from the attack. "That was a close one," Braxis said as Zalafard tried to control his anger. He could see Braxis had put a lot of energy into that blast to defend himself. "Rockwall, take Whirlwind's sword back to his son. I will stay and deal with Braxis," Zalafard said as Rockwall nodded, putting his hand over his heart. "No one is leaving here alive," said Braxis as he started collecting his power again. However, Zalafard took advantage and drew water from the ocean, slamming it into Braxus. Rockwell ran over and grabbed the sword. Quickly, he dived into the ground and tunneled off. Braxus broke through the water by jumping high into the air and tried crashing down on Zalaford. He darted out of the way. "You shall pay for what you've done," Zalaford said as Braxus let out the most vicious laugh Zalaford had ever heard. "You think you can stand up to my power? Have you not seen your ally? I shall crush you as I did him," Braxus said. "We shall see," said Zalaford as he started working the water and reformed his double-end ice sword. He charged Braxus as they both moved at top speed. Zalaford had to admit that this general knew how to fight and felt a hoof collide with his stomach. He didn't feel anything other than a push as Braxus grunted in pain and jumped back. "What kind of sorcery is this?" Braxus said with anger. "I would think you'd remember from the last time, Braxus, or didn't your master remind you? I can harden my scales like armor," Zalaford said with a smirk. Braxus thought momentarily before he replied. I do remember. Well, in that case, I have something for you." Braxus quickly brought his sword around and blasted sickly green energy at Zalaford. Zalaford instantly put out his hands and grunted as the blast hit, pushing him backward. He could feel the heat on his hands, even with his power activated, and reflected the blast upwards. He ducked out of the way. Immediately, the air grew cold as Zalaford held his hands over his head, and Braxus saw a wall of water behind him. "Neptune's 1,000 ice spears!" Zalaford yelled as the whole wall of water turned to ice and divided into many spears that rained down on Braxus. Before Braxus was struck, he caught Zalaford off guard with a blast that sent him crashing into the rock face and obliterated his body. Braxus died as many spears went through his body with a sickly thud. But his face was one of happiness because he killed an old enemy.